Avery, whose show is this? And we're live. Welcome, everybody, here to the Lakers Lounge podcast. I'm Anthony Irwin, Senior Lakers Insider for Clutch Points. Joined on this fine Monday afternoon, my time, morning, late morning for those of you watching on the West Coast, by Jason Timpf of Hoops Tonight, of The Volume, and recently of Vegas, right? You got back, safe trip, all that good stuff?
Yeah, everything went well. It was a nice way to end the busy season because this has been the busiest busy season that I can remember since I started doing this. Just because, obviously, as you know, Logan, the head of content at the Volume, is a big Lakers fan, and then the Luka trade went down, and so we were a little bit more indexing towards live shows towards the tail end of the regular season, and then obviously we always hit the playoffs super hard. So kind of feels like 5 straight months of chaos, but then all of a sudden we just get to take a deep breath. My wife and I just moved to Denver. That's why I have absolutely no background right now. So probably a shitty time to move.
Are you sure Vegas was good? Looks like you're in jail. Like, are you okay?
Yeah, dude, moving sucks under any circumstances, but I keep telling myself I'd rather move now than move during the season because then it would only be that much more chaotic.
Yeah, we moved out here about 5 years ago, and there are certain powers at be that are like pulling me back to the West Coast, for work and stuff, and I'm just holding on like crazy. My wife is too, so that helps, but we're just holding on here to Austin, Texas, because I hate moving. I love our house. I looked just for shits and giggles at like what we would have to buy if we sold our house here, back home, or anywhere close to the West Coast. And I'm like, no, it's not happening. I'm here forever. But no, congratulations on the move to Denver. I think I'm going to take a trip out there because, you and I have mutual friend Adam Mattes out there, and probably going to, head out there for whenever the Lakers play Denver in LA, and then we'll probably check out that game. But
yeah, we'll have to grab some dinner when you're out here. You'll have to let me know.
Yeah, that's the plan. Absolutely. All right. So today on the show, we're going to be talking about this Lakers offseason to this point. I'm not going to go so far as to say that it feels over. There's still work that can be done. There's still work that the Lakers, I'm told, are working to get done, or that they would like to maybe be able to get done. So we'll see how successful they are in being able to do that stuff. But I do think we have a pretty solid picture of what the Lakers are going to look like next season, and what the rest of the conference and what most of the league is going to look like. So we'll talk about where the Lakers rank within that. Do we consider the Lakers contenders? Is this a viable opportunity for Luka Doncic and LeBron James to vie for a championship? And then, Jason, I saw that you went somewhat viral for a response to, I think it was Bleacher Report's top 100 rankings or whatever, and how they had Kobe outside of the top 10. We'll talk about that at the tail end of the show as well. And then, as always, if you guys leave any super comments over the course of the show, at the very least, I will address those at the end of the episode. But let's go ahead and dive on in. Quick reminder, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. And if you guys are listening to this in its podcast form, hit subscribe wherever it is that you get your podcast, preferably on Odyssey, because I am a company man. All right. So the Lakers offseason so far, out goes Dorian Finney-Smith, out goes Alex Len, out goes Shake Milton, out goes Markieff Morris, out goes Jordan Goodwin. In comes Jake LaRavia, DeAndre Ayton, Marcus Smart, and Adu Thiero. All of that in no particular order, obviously. That was just off the top of the head. I think it's a pretty successful offseason. I don't know that they crossed all of their I's and dotted all of their T's, but I think the team is better now than it was the last time we saw them. How do you stand, or where do you stand on the work that the Lakers have done this summer?
It depends on how you're framing the conversation. I think if you're framing it within the confines of their goals, meaning like to stay focused on not giving up any of their long-term flexibility in either assets or their cap sheet. If you strictly look at it within those confines, I'd call it an A+.
Yeah.
Like if you said, the two biggest needs for the Lakers going into the offseason were a starting caliber center that had some sort of natural fit with Luka Doncic and a starting caliber two-way player that could play the 2 or the 3 to more properly balance the starting lineup. The Marcus Smart and DeAndre Ayton are both those guys, right? Like I would argue Marcus Smart is exactly the kind of player that the Lakers need when he's healthy, right? I would argue DeAndre Ayton is exactly the kind of players that the Lakers need when he's healthy and when he's engaged,
when he cares,
when he's acting like a professional athlete. Like it's just within the confines of the kind of circumstances they put themselves in. Now, I think the Lakers needed to get younger and more athletic, particularly in their starting lineup. And the only way they were going to do that is if they did things like put Dalton Connect in the first round pick on the table. And so I think it's all kind of like within the lens of the overall approach. I look at it as like, if you ask me, is it more likely that the Lakers eventually surround Luka Doncic with another player who is a second All-NBA type of player at some point while he's here? Or that they never actually successfully surround him with a second-team All-NBA type of talent? I'd argue it's more likely they don't, because it's just hard. There's 10 of them in the entire league. It's a very, very rare breed of basketball player. And so my approach would have been a little bit more geared towards trying to turn what I view as future value in Dalton in a first-round pick. I'm not as high on Dalton as other Lakers fans. I think he's years away
not very high,
having a dead serious impact on a dead serious team. But like, if I would be gearing more towards trying to turn Dalton and that first round pick into a mid-20s starter. Now, for the record, I want to be clear. This offseason's not over, and it's not like there's an obvious guy out there that they should have been targeting. So for me, it's more, you know how like when you have like a friend or a loved one who has like a behavior and you can kind of see it coming and you're like, I know they're about to do that shit. That's kind of how I feel about this Lakers team, where it's like, I just know that they're going to sit on those, they're going to sit on that pick and they're going to sit on Dalton because they view him and that pick as the vehicle with which to get the next great star that's going to play alongside Luka. And I wish they had more kind of internal value that they'd put on a mid-20s high-level starter. I think especially alongside Luka, a superstar who's the peak of all advantage creation. I think high-level role players carry more value with Luka than they do in other situations.
Yeah.
But like, I think when we remove all of that and understand how the Lakers operate and how they don't want to give any sort of first round draft compensation for a high level starter, they want to save it for stars. Within those confines, I'd say that they did about as well as you possibly can this offseason.
Yeah, I think that's an important framing point. And, you know, it's so funny. You make the point of you consider it less likely that the Lakers find another player of LeBron's caliber for Luka for the remainder of Luka's tenure with the Lakers. For the vast majority of organizations and fan bases out there, that'd be super easy to just write off. Like, of course, the Lakers, you know, the Minnesota Timberwolves wouldn't be able to pair Anthony Edwards with current LeBron James because they've never been able to do that. The Lakers are the only franchise really that you could even somewhat hope and say realistically, yeah, sure, once LeBron goes away, they'll go out and get the next guy. And I think that sometimes kind of blocks that puts blinders on them for the opportunity that they have in front of them. And I think we just kind of saw that. Now, ironically, they wind up getting Luka, which kind of makes our point moot to a certain extent, but they just had LeBron James and Anthony Davis, and both those guys are playing at a really high level. And for the last like 4 or 5 years of them playing at a pretty damn high level, they've been saying, yeah, but, and, you know, the future is, you know, we're banking on the future. Even when they got Luka, Jeannie came out and said that they were kind of sort of riding out the string with AD and LeBron, and they were going to kind of recalibrate once that era was officially over. And now they kind of have to figure out a way to make it work with the you know, with those eras kind of crossing over. And I'm really kind of curious how this is going to go, because I do think they have a great opportunity in front of them. I don't think, like, in this era of parity, I don't think, you know, the tiers are so far apart that it's impossible to jump from one tier to another, as it used to be 4 or 5 you know, years ago and beyond, where if you were a tier 2 or let alone a tier 3 team, that's basically where you were going to find yourself at the end of the season. Now everything's kind of flattened out. So if you're a tier 2 team, it only takes something bad happening to a tier 1 or something decent happening to you as a tier 2, and you can jump up. And I think that's where the Lakers kind of find themselves right now, where I think they're a tier 2 Western Conference team. And if they added a more viable starter than Marcus Smart or Rui Hachimura, now you're all of a sudden talking about them as a tier 1 team. And if you're a tier 1 team and you're entering a series with LeBron James and Luka Doncic, that's a pretty good spot to be in. And I'm kind of surprised at how many Lakers fans seem to overlook that kind of opportunity. How much, because this is a conversation I've had with Pete a ton, where it's like, yeah, but the LeBron Luka duo is this. Are we really sure? You know, the athletic, I guess, disadvantage that they would have against most of these teams is something that they could overcome. I'm of the belief those are in a playoff series. When they're both fully engaged, those are two top 10 at the absolute worst player or best players in the league, probably a little bit higher for each of them. And I am of the opinion, go for it now with those guys. And worst case scenario, you have decent players on pretty good contracts that you would be able to flip for whatever assets you need down the road anyway. I've never understood this whole Giannis Jokic plan or whatever, given the opportunity that the Lakers have had in front of them.
Yeah, like there is no name right now that's obvious. Like we talked about Herb Jones earlier in the summer, and there are certain guys like I've talked about, like Aaron Nesmith potentially is a guy that could come available down the line. It's not even necessarily about that player. It's just I'm of the opinion that if that opportunity presented itself, the Lakers would not jump on it because they would hold out for that right guy. And that's where I think it's a mistake, because we're going to talk about whether or not the Lakers are contenders. To me, it's such a variable. There's so many different variables. Like, is Luka going to be out of shape and bulky knee Luka, or is he going to be in shape revenge campaign Luka? Are we going to get second team All NBA LeBron like we saw before the groin injury, or are we going to get a lesser version of LeBron? Are we going to get a healthy and focused DeAndre Ayton, or an unhealthy and unfocused DeAndre Ayton? Are we going to get a healthy Marcus Smart or an unhealthy Marcus Smart? There's all of these different variables. And if every one of those variables skews towards the positive, they're one of the best teams in the NBA. Like make no mistake about it. Like a healthy Marcus Smart with an MVP level Luka and a LeBron that's an All NBA player and DeAndre Ayton in a contract year, that is a championship contender. But as we know, the margins are thin. Oklahoma City does not beat Denver if they don't get Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso. So, like, if you want to sit here and look at me and tell me that these guys don't matter, that a sixth starter or an upgraded starter or an additional high-level role player can't swing the outcome of the trophy, it absolutely does. Denver wins that series if they don't have Isaiah Hartenstein playing Jokic's right hand the entire series with Chet behind him. Like, it is a game of inches when you get into these Western
or Denver
Conference
wins
tiers.
That series if they make the Cam Johnson trade before last season.
Exactly.
If they swap out MPJ for Cam Johnson, that's probably a very different series.
Exactly. And so that's why with everything that I'm talking about with them, it's all kind of like in the context of how this potentially goes. Like, I think that as soon as you brought in Luka, it was completely reasonable to be like, we can let DFS walk if we get something more flexible. Like, I get that. Even though, like, the reason why it was more complicated is because we know Dorian was so impactful to them last year. What were they, like 17 points better per 100 possessions when he was on the floor versus when he was off? But like they by letting Dorian walk, they were able to get DeAndre Ayton. And so it is more complicated than just that. And even the conversation surrounding the draft picks that they sent out, I don't think that's necessarily fair, because you sent those draft picks out before you even knew Luka was going to be a Laker. So I cut them some slack on that front. I cut them some slack on the way they've handled this offseason. My main point of bifurcation with the Lakers and their approach is, I am of the opinion that if you were to trade Dalton in a first for a high-level starter in his 20s, that you could then, if for whatever reason you needed to, trade your high-level starter in his late 20s for additional asset return. They are assets that don't depreciate at the same rate. And so no one say, like for instance, the Andrew Wiggins trade. I would not make the Andrew Wiggins trade if it demanded a first-round pick. Now, obviously, That trade has been kind of poo-pooed over the course of the last couple of weeks, so it's not likely. But I'm more talking about it in principle.
Back when it was a thing, yeah.
In principle, I understand not giving up a first-round pick for a 30-year-old under the new situation. That makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense to me is holding out for Giannis when the reality is that you could be a high-level starter away from being a dead serious championship contender. And that's the whole purpose of us doing this, is to try to put together that team that has a shot.
If it was Rui, because there's a whole bunch of noise on that front, but if it was Rui and Dalton essentially in one of their expirings for Wiggins, would you have done that? No,
yeah,
first round pick?
I would give up Dalton for Andrew Wiggins. I just wouldn't give up the first round pick and Dalton, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, because essentially, as I had heard it at the time, the first round pick was the sticking point. But then over the course of the summer, one of the other things before the Norm trade, I think once they traded for Norm, they realized we need Wiggins defense, so we can't just give that dude away. But before the Norm trade, one of the other things that I was kind of hearing a little bit about was that Miami was actually trying to clear their books for the pursuit of Giannis and Jokic or even Luka, and that they would see it as clogging the Lakers' books with Wiggins. So they may have been a little bit more open to moving Wiggins for Rui and even if it wasn't Dalton, the other expiring contracts that were necessary to get it done. And I think I would have done that if I were the Lakers at the time. Because the other thing too with Rui, a lot of people were just like kind of assuming, oh yeah, just don't start him, put Smart in the starting group, all of that stuff, which basketball wise, if this was 2K, I would totally understand. But Rui is a very different player when he's engaged versus when he isn't. And I'm concerned that if you take him out of the starting group and he's not engaged, that he won't provide the scoring punch that you're kind of hoping for. So I kind of feel like the Lakers I think the right move is to start Smart in Rui's spot, but I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. This is going to be the topic that I think everybody kind of argues about for all of August and September. I feel like I think every random Tuesday over the course of all of August, it's going to be people declaring war on each other for wanting to start Reeves or Rui. That's going to be the conversation. Where do you lean there?
I think it's obvious that you start Austin and you bench Rui. I think that it just makes the entire lineup make more sense from a defensive balance perspective. Most NBA teams in a traditional setup will have a primary point of attack defender, which Marcus Smart seamlessly slots into. Most teams have a skill guard they need to hide. So whether it's like James Harden with the Clippers or it's Steph Curry with the Warriors or, like Trae Young with the Hawks, like you have a skill guard you need to hide. That's what Luka is essentially. And then you have Austin, to me, kind of slots in as that secondary perimeter defender, the guy who's guarding usually more of a lock and trail, like shooter type of guy, or an off ball scorer or a secondary scorer. Like the easiest way I could put it is like when you're throwing the ball up against the Warriors and Austin Reeves is the primary matchup for Steph Curry, that's a problem. But if he's the primary matchup for Buddy Hield, it makes a lot more sense, right? Mm-hmm. So like having Austin tiered in that way or slotted in that way, and then LeBron as your traditional low man help side defender that's backing DeAndre Ayton, and DeAndre Ayton is your traditional big. Like it just balances out so much better. As far as the thing with Rui goes, like, there's no doubt that Rui has all sorts of offensive utility alongside the starters. He's a wonderful fit with Luka. He's a wonderful fit with LeBron. I don't worry so much about him struggling off the bench, because I think that essentially when LeBron comes out at that middle point in the first quarter and Rui comes in, he's just going to come right in and start feasting off of the advantages that Luka creates. I think he'll be fine. But like the whole point is like, that's why he's a redundancy. And I will never advocate for getting rid of Rui for nothing. But if you got rid of Rui for a player that fits into an archetype you don't have, which is like a traditional starting three, then fuck yeah, you make that move. Like, I don't understand.
It's pretty simple.
It's a simple matter of roster balance. Like, even if you argued to me that Rui is slightly better than Andrew Wiggins, which I don't think I agree. I think Andrew is a second tier perimeter defender in the entire NBA and can even sometimes enter into that top tier. Like, he's one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA that can drive a closeout. Like, to me, I think Andrew is just a better player. But even separate from that, he represents a specific need that the Lakers have had for years. And so if remove Wiggins from the equation, even If you had the opportunity to flip Rui, a starting caliber 4, for a starting caliber 3, you have to take it, just simply because it's about that roster balance piece.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% there. So I have the tiers of the West. I'll leave the East alone because it's an abomination. So we'll just let them just kind of fight amongst themselves in the shallow pool over there. With the Lakers though, and in the Western Conference, I have just Denver and OKC as the top tier of the West. I would have Houston, the Lakers, Minnesota, and Clippers as tier 2, with Houston at the top of that tier. I just need to see it in practice before I put them up in the upper echelon there. And those are the two kind of tiers of teams that I think matter, with other teams kind of filling in. San Antonio is going to be a really interesting team this year. And so on and so forth. New Orleans seems forever cursed. I like their roster, but I think their facility is built on a burial ground that they shouldn't have messed with. So I'll just see what happens there. But those are kind of like the top 6 teams of the Western Conference. How do you have them ranked, and how close do you think the Lakers are to that tier 1?
So I think Houston's on the bottom of the top tier, but I do think they're on the top tier. I think there is a lot of theoretical with Houston as it pertains to like whether or not they can actually win the championship, and that's going to come down to how things grease together on offense with Kevin Durant. Yeah. But I also am a big believer in don't overthink things. Like Houston, just on the strength of being an ass-kicking defense, like was a 2 seed and dragged Golden State to a 7th game just on the strength of their defense. And that was with throughout most of the series, none of their players on offense actually contributing much beyond Alperen Şengün, and then Fred VanVleet catching that heater at the tail end of the series. If they just continue to muck things up the way that they do, and KD just hits a few more rescue shots and a few more clutch shots, they're going to be a huge pain to beat. So like I put them in that top tier. Just whether or not they can actually win against any of those other top tier teams comes down to Kevin Durant and how well things mesh on offense. After we drop down there, I think the 2 LA teams are next. I've probably put the Clippers a slight bit above the Lakers. The Lakers just have a lot of theoretical stuff with them. I think Minnesota's right there up there with them too, and I think Golden State's right there. I think those 4 teams are kind of enmeshed in that tier, with the LA teams kind of. I think Ayton gives the Lakers a substantially higher offensive ceiling than they had last year, and obviously Marcus Smart addresses a position of need. Minnesota losing Nickeil Alexander-Walker seems like a loss, but they just continue to develop with Ant every year and his internal kind of just improving the team. And Golden State, I know everyone wants to roast them for not doing anything this offseason, but I still think they're going to be a big pain in the butt, especially with their starting lineup. Yeah. So those 4 to me is that second tier. I do not view San Antonio as a second tier team. I think that they're going to continue to be a play-in kind of in that group this year. I don't view Sacramento in that group. I don't view New Orleans in that group. So to me, there's the top 3 and then the next 4 in the West.
Yeah, I should have included Golden State. They're going to get once this Kuminga thing is kind of figured out, Horford and Melton are basically handshake deals anyway. And I think Gary Payton II is going to head back there on a minimum as well. So that'll be a good roster whenever it comes together. And then we'll see also what they're able to trade Kuminga for mid-season. That's the other part of this thing with the Lakers is, okay, you kept your powder dry, right? If this is in fact the team, you go into the season with Gabe's expiring and with Maxi's expiring, you have the first rounder, you have Dalton, who might eventually look like he likes playing basketball again. We'll see. But how much do you think the Lakers can improve here? Because that's the other part of this is I think there are 2 factors that I think the Lakers can improve through. One, we didn't see LeBron and Luka and Austin run anything together last year. At no point, regular season, postseason. And I think in the postseason, it skewed even further into your turn, my turn stuff. And the only guy getting turns consistently, it felt like, was Luka. So if you basically have the Lakers improve offensively by way of getting DeAndre Ayton there, and I guess we have some I guess
Get some news.
I don't want to call it news, but Shams just said that the Lakers are bringing back Christian Coloco on a 2-way contract, and then Chris Mannon on a 2-way contract as well. I believe Jemison is already on one. I don't know who Chris Mannon is, so congrats to Chris. But Coloco's that's good news for the Lakers. They were really hoping to be able to keep him. But I think is this a hot take, Jason? I think Coloco's better at basketball than Jackson Hayes. I don't like what Jackson does very much. He's too volatile.
It's hard. Jackson, I do think it brings value as a vertical spacer, and I'd argue alongside Luka in a regular season context, I think Jackson brings a lot of utility as a vertical spacer. I mean, we literally saw that down the stretch of the regular season.
Yeah.
But Coloco, I would argue Coloco higher floor, more matchup resilient, but Jackson more kind of like utility just as a regular season dude who can catch lobs. But I think both of them are going to lead to frustrations on various nights depending on what matchup they're playing.
It's not August, so we're not going to debate Christian Coloco and Jackson Hayes. But yeah, what do you think of the point that I was making? Essentially, that I think the Lakers can improve a ton organically, and then over the course of the season, I do think they'll kind of lighten up on their stance on the first rounder once they get into the season. We know Rob Pelinka doesn't like to enter a season without a first rounder in his pocket, so I never anticipated they were going to move that first round pick. But if they had that first rounder and Dalton and I guess the arrow could potentially be moved over the course of the season, then you have that expiring money. I actually think that the Lakers could address some of the issues that remain on this roster and really get better. But I think the biggest way or the biggest step forward that they have to take this year is offensively, by way of Luka, LeBron, and Austin interacting at all on that side of the ball.
It's tricky. I've seen people say like, oh, well, why aren't they running more LeBron, Luka 2-man game? Because it's going to get switched. It's the same thing that happened with LeBron and Anthony Davis. Both LeBron and Luka dictate similar perimeter defenders, big, strong athletes. That's what they dictate, right? And so I think like 3-man action's a way to make switching more complicated. You incorporate a guy like Austin in action with them. And they did some of this over the course of that end of the season, just not as much as I'd like to see, but I think that there's potential there. But yeah, like you're not going to just be able to run LeBron, Luka ball screens and get a bunch of advantages out of it. Teams are just going to switch. I think the biggest thing that I keep an eye on is catch and shoot shooting, specifically with Austin. LeBron actually shot pretty well off the catch in the postseason, and that's why he kind of maintained a good amount of offensive utility. I thought a big part of why Austin had a rough playoff series is because he has not been able to connect his off the dribble shooting with his catch and shoot jump shooting. He's been very streaky there. And I think, in terms
he gets
of like
sped up a lot. Like
yeah.
It's like a tick less on his jumper, because he's the kind of shooter where like the ball has to go back on the platter, right? And it takes just a little bit longer. And I think in the postseason, everybody's closing out so much harder that it really speeds them up just that much more in the postseason.
It's not entirely uncommon for ball handlers to struggle to shoot off the catch. They're two very different processes. Shooting off the dribble is about fluidity. Shooting off the catch is about muscle memory. Shooting off the catch is doing the same exact damn thing every single time. Shooting off the dribble is about connecting the dribble to the shot. It's and footwork to the shot. And so it's a little bit more about fluidity, which Austin is great at in that respect. But there are ways to connect to the two, and there are guys who can successfully do both. It just takes an enormous amount of work. And by the way, I'm not over here acting like I'm preaching at Austin. I know Austin knows this. Yeah. I know this is Austin's goal this offseason. I haven't talked to him, but I guarantee you if I texted his agent and was like, hey, what's Austin working on this summer? Aaron would be like, he's working on catch and shoot jump shooting. Like, I know that's what he's working on. He's too competitive. He knows what he needs to do to succeed off of Luka. But to me, it's a little bit of that 3-man action. It's a little bit about Austin in particular improving off the catch. I even think LeBron could improve a little. LeBron was a little streaky off the catch towards the tail end of the season. I think the third piece of it is pace, because I think the upside that comes with having lots of offensive skill, the upside of having not just play finishers off of Luka, but dudes that can hoop, like guys that are bucket getters like LeBron, like Austin, like Rui Hachimura, even Marcus Smart. The upside there is getting the advantage early in the possession and letting those guys actually utilize their ability to attack off the catch and to continue to further the advantage and get fantastic looks. And the one way you can prevent that advantage from manifesting is by walking the ball up the court and not getting into that advantage until too late in the shot clock. And so I think it's going to be a big part of JJ's goal in training camp is getting them to play a little bit faster, but then also leaning into Luka. Like Luka's the second best advantage creator in the entire NBA behind Jokic, in my opinion. Like he's that good. So every minute he's on the floor, it makes sense for him to be making the first decision. But if he makes that decision earlier in the possession, it will prevent Austin and LeBron from getting out of rhythm in the process. I think that's going to be that third piece of it.
Yeah, one of the things I'm actually really excited about this upcoming year is you have Ayton is a volume rebounder. You have Luka, who's a really good rebounder for his position and size. And you have LeBron, who's one of the all-time rebounders ever. And I think at least defensively, the Lakers should be able to rebound well enough to get out in transition more frequently than they did last year. And I think that will... if it doesn't lead to, an uptick in transition points, that, to your point a second ago, gets them into their offense that much faster, and doesn't allow teams to really just kind of play volleyball on them the way that Minnesota was by the end of that series. So you do or you do not have the Lakers as contenders right now?
So I mean, I think all 7 of those teams are contenders.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you could talk at least 2 teams out east into contender. I think both Cleveland and New York could be contenders. I think it's a fine line between top tier and second tier. I think I talked about this on my show this morning. I view this Lakers team as extremely high variance. Like, again, to put it very simply, if Luka comes in and has a revenge MVP campaign, and LeBron reaches second team all NBA level, and Austin improves as a catch and shoot player, and Marcus Smart is healthy, the guy that we saw in Boston a couple years ago, or even in Memphis when he was healthy. When Marcus was healthy in Memphis, they were good.
Yeah.
And if DeAndre Ayton in a contract year is focused and healthy and plays to his capability, that if all 5 of those things happen, they are a top tier contender, in my opinion. It's just such a thin track that they have to walk to get there. From there, I think if they make an aggressive move to add a 6th starter, really a 7th starter if you count Rui, basically just another reliable rotation piece, something that preferably slots Marcus Smart off the bench, something like that, I think is what would push them into a bona fide top tier contender, the way that I view Denver as in Oklahoma City and Houston.
Yeah. Essentially, to whittle that down, and I don't want to speak for you, but the Lakers need to limit their ifs. They need to find a way over the course of the year to cut that number of ifs down, because that's a scary number of ifs, right? And look, some of that stuff is going to be figured out really quickly. We're going to look at Luka and we're going to be like, okay, that if is taken care of, right? We're going to see him on opening night, and if he looks like he has one visible ab, perfect, awesome. All right, that if is taken care of. I think we're also going to learn pretty quickly about the way that Luka and LeBron are kind of going to work together this year. I think we'll know that pretty quickly, because that's something that it's either going to be there or it won't. And then the other stuff, right? What kind of a season DeAndre Ayton has over the course of the year, we won't know until next April, and whether or not Marcus Smart is going to be able to remain healthy. That's another one that we won't know until way later in the year, or if the Lakers are able to kind of supplement themselves with some talent there. The other if factor here, I think, also is Vando, because I think this team is still a little soft in terms of, physicality and motor and all of that stuff. And if Vando is playable again, if he becomes a playable NBA guy again, that helps with some of that stuff, and extends the rotation a little bit. And we'll see there. I know there are people, I always get asked, well, what about Maxey? What if Maxey's able to be their stretch 5? He's had a fork stuck in him for a couple of years. I don't really see that with him. All right, let's segue really quickly over to the Kobe stuff, which, again, I think it was Bleacher Report And I feel like these lists come out earlier every year. Like we're still in July. There are still like viable free agents there. We're talking about top 100 ever. But I saw that the Kobe's list comes out. And my theory on this has always been, and I want to start macro and we'll go specifically into Kobe here in a second. I've been creating content for like 12 years, I would say, maybe 13. I don't even know. And one of the rules that I learned really, really quickly is that if you make content that pisses Lakers fans off, it always traffics well because Lakers people, Lakers fans are going to click on it and hate click on it, but they'll click on it. Click's worth a click. And then, people around the league, especially, people who root for these other teams are going to click on it because they like seeing the Lakers get crapped on. So I think that's kind of the starting point. And I feel like Kobe is the lightning rod of that. And he's always been kind of like he's always been polarizing and he'll always be polarizing. But I think he is polarization weaponized in this regard. And so when I see him like out of a top 10, especially at 11, which is right out of the top 10, it's in that spot where the person who makes that list or the people who make that list can be like, what? He's one spot out of the top 10. What's wrong? And I wish if people were actually going to say what they were going to say about Kobe, they'd say it with their chests. Like I saw T-Mac try to say that, if he had Shaq, that this and that and the other. And it's like, no, man, you didn't defend at Kobe's level. And that's kind of what I wanted to intro into this conversation. You did a really good job of kind of contextualizing the inefficiency because that always seems to be the knock on Kobe. But to me, when I talk about Kobe or when I put him in those lists or tiers or whatever, however we want to frame it, to me, it starts on defense. In that, like, how many all-time great players, especially now, we don't see it anymore now because most of these offensive engines are hidden to a certain extent. But Kobe was still at the tail end of that era where your best player not only was the driving force of your offense, but also matched up against the other team's best offensive player. And, I know a lot of people like to say, well, Kobe is this and that when it comes to the all NBA defensive stuff. And yeah, he got a couple reputation ones there at the tail end, but he was also a madman for the vast majority of his career as a defensive player. And that to me is the part of this that I feel like people always tend to ignore. Like I see the big push right now for Steph to be put ahead of Kobe in these all-time rankings. And it's like, I get it in terms of the evolution of the sport and the concept of spacing and the offensive weapon that he was, but he never, ever defended the other team's best player ever. And I don't know why it tends to be forgotten or overlooked, that part of it specifically with Kobe.
Yeah, I think it even extends beyond defense to just him fighting for a key contested rebound or just in general, his brain, his mind for the game. I think the efficiency stuff, one of the big things in general with tough shot makers over the years is we hyper focus on efficiency when the reality is that a lot of times in a big playoff moment at the end of a game, you kind of just need a guy who can get his own shot. And that can be more reliable than many of the other options on the table. The most recent example I can think of is the Serbia-USA game when it's like, okay, LeBron did his thing, the transition attacks, and Steph did his thing, hitting the three, the couple threes that he hit, and Joel Embiid hit a couple tough middies over Jokic. But then all of a sudden, it's like Serbia just kept scoring, and it was like, man, we need a bucket. KD, you do it. And then everyone went and stood over there, and KD was able
Kobe
to,
in the
to
gold
go
medal
create
game
his
too,
own shot.
remember?
Kobe in the gold medal game is a great example. And so, like, to me, a lot of times it's about being able to hit the shot, not necessarily 47% from two and 38% from three in order to do that. And that's the thing. There are a lot of guys in the NBA that James Harden is a great example, who's been able to kind of like maximize modern efficiency in terms of just where he's taking his shots from and taking them out of certain types of coverages where there's openings, but then in a playoff series, when a team starts switching and everything bogs down, all of a sudden he can't like get to his spot the way that the greats could at that specific position. And so I think that kind of colors some of the efficiency part of it. The defense and rebounding we talked about, that also manifests in terms of leadership. Like when your best player is guarding the other team's best player and competing for every rebound and just in general caring about all those details, it becomes impossible for the guys down the roster to do so. And like for instance, LeBron in the prime of his career was one of the best defenders in the world, and consistently I think LeBron was the best player from about 2012 to 2020. And in that span, he was pretty consistent on that end of the floor. But there have been stretches with the Lakers where LeBron towards the end, and one thing I'll say in his defense is I don't think these teams thought they could win the title. So I think LeBron, a mentally engaged LeBron that sees the trophy is different than a LeBron who's like, we're a third tier team, and so what's the point?
He played,
you know what I mean?
47 and a half minutes against Jokic in that Western Conference Finals game and guarded him. So like when he was engaged, he could do it, but there wasn't enough reason to be engaged consistently enough the last few years.
Yes, and it did manifest in some of the sloppiness down the roster, because like if the leader's not doing it, why are we going to do it? You know what I mean? And even down the stretch of Kobe's career, I'm sure there were similar effects like that, where when he wasn't as engaged defensively, it manifested down the roster. But within those seasons, like, I always talk about it with LeBron, like even to this day, like if you go back to the late prime, like 2020 to 2022, if you had a team that you knew could win the title, that was a legitimate top tier contender, there was no better guy in the league to have leading it from a mental standpoint than LeBron, because he knew all the checkpoints you had to hit along the way. And those checkpoints matter. Like with Shaq, when Shaq in his comments, when he was like saying like, I would have got a couple with T-Mac, I would have got a couple with Vince. It's like, first of all, it's all theoretical. It's like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't know what any of that means, but there are some substantial differences between Kobe and T-Mac and Kobe and Vince in terms of their give a shit and their leadership capability. And like, and in a lot of ways, Kobe was making up for Shaq's deficits on those fronts. And so I think in general, I think when I look at Kobe, I don't ever like synthesizing things down to rings, but I do think that it's not a coincidence that he got 5. And I think that when I'm looking at that top tier, the LeBron, Michael, Kobe, that 3 in particular, it's apex competition. It's apex like savage competitor behavior that manifests in down the roster buy-in in a way that even extends beyond what they do on the court.
Why do you think there's such a gap between the way that his peers and the guys that follow him talk about Kobe compared to your typical hashtag content creator? Like why is there such a gap there? Do you think it's a stubbornness thing? Because it's wild to me how many people just listen to how many former players, guys who competed against Kobe, guys who watch Kobe, all that stuff, just say, yeah, he's top 5, he's top 3, he's this, he's that. And then, we get, a lot more analytically inclined people saying like, well, technically it was like the 13 to 15 range. Like I'm trying to figure out why I could understand there being a discrepancy. I don't understand why it's so wide.
I think it's a combination of things. I think part of it is some of the aesthetics. Like I think, for people who have played a lot of basketball, you see Kobe's tough shot making and you have this profound appreciation for the work. Like you have any idea how much you have to work on footwork and lift and release and left shoulder and right shoulder
when I see skateboarders, right? I'm like, dude, I know how much time you felt you spent on the ground learning to do that shit. like I know how difficult it took to learn that shit. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah, exactly. And so like I think for basketball players, there's a profound appreciation for the work that Kobe put in to become the scorer that he was. I think for people that are disconnected from the game in terms of like playing experience, it becomes a lot of like, this is ugly. It's hero ball. He's jacking up bad shots and blah, blah, blah. And they can't, like, that's why those guys always gear towards the classic advantage creators. And I don't necessarily blame them. Like, look, Jokic does play beautiful basketball. So does Steph. So does Tyrese Halliburton. He's like, LeBron is an example of this. These guys that like are just the wonderful ball moving, pass first types of guys. Those guys have a certain aesthetic appeal that is more, that kind of transcends into the casual basketball fan base. But I think the scoring archetypes, like, let's call a spade a spade. Kobe played ugly basketball sometimes. He did.
Yeah.
And it was pretty for the guys who appreciate the skill, but he did play ugly basketball sometimes, and it worked, and I believed in it. But that was the whole thing, is like with Kobe and the Lakers, is like, you're playing two bigs, you're defending at a super high level, and Kobe's carrying you home with this surgical shot making from these different spots on the floor. But it wasn't the prettiest basketball all the time. But the same thing could have been said about MJ. If you remember, before MJ was winning, there was a lot of criticism about him being a ball hog. And so, like, I think in general, the ball hog kind of thing just stuck to him, and it caused a lot of people to not appreciate what he did.
Yeah. I also feel like, I don't know, Kobe to me was so competitive that if he came along 10, 15 years later and he saw that a potential advantage could be gained by being more efficient, by taking different shots, by perfecting different spots on the court, or understanding different passes that he needs to keep awake, keep available for himself, I feel like he would have done that stuff, like that kind of goes back to the rings argument. If you show that you are willing to do whatever it takes to win 5 championships, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt when it comes to whatever it would take to win at that level in a different era. So, and that's a different, but all of this shit's hypothetical. So that's where we find ourselves. All right. We have one super comment here, and then we'll go ahead and get out of here, but we have to play the most important clip on the show. So all right. Green Light Transport writes, bring Austin off the bench to lead the second unit. So I guess I'll make the case for Austin coming off of the bench, seeing as I think we both agree that Rui should be the one coming off of the bench. But I guess I'll try to make the case for Austin in that right now, your engines for the second unit are Gabe Vincent and Rui Hachimura. And now I'm not gonna counter myself because this isn't debate class or whatever, but like, it's like, if you start Austin and Luka and LeBron, there might be a bit of a lull before you get back to starters making their ways back onto the court. And I guess theoretically, if Austin is starting on the bench, you maintain that punch at all times, basically. Is that worth it? Or do you agree with the sentiment? Is that worth the fit concerns there, though, with having somebody at your point of attack and then also not having somebody to defend wings? Where do you stand on that stuff?
Yeah, that's really it. Is like Rui, LeBron, DeAndre, and Luka. None of those 4 guys can guard on the perimeter at a high level. So like Austin, for all the criticism again, and I think the majority of the criticism levied towards Austin has to do with the fact that he was slotted inappropriately, like we talked about earlier with like a potential, like a theoretical Warriors matchup. Austin, you need him out there as that second perimeter defender alongside Marcus Smart. And as far as like leading the second unit, it's like you've got 3 really good shot creators. You're going to stagger them. Like, LeBron's going to check out of the game, and Luka and Austin will lead the late first quarter group. And then Luka's going to check out of the game, and then there'll be a brief LeBron and Austin stretch, and then Austin will get a rest, and then Luka will come back in. And like, they're going to be staggered in a way that it's not going to be an issue, And so I like, in terms of like Austin having opportunities to really have the ball in his hands, like, it's just gonna happen. It's gonna happen because of the way that they're staggered. And so to me, it's more actually about the defensive slotting, and you need Austin as another perimeter defender in that group.
I think he's really underrated as a defender when he's your second best defender.
Yep.
Like, we saw it with Max. when Max was swapped in there for D'Angelo Russell, all of a sudden it was like, oh shit, Austin is actually okay if he's not defending De'Aaron Fox. Look at that, like. And I think we'll probably find that out all over again this year. But Jason, as always, this has been a blast. Congratulations on the really successful year that you guys had with Hoops Tonight and with the volume. Bummer I didn't run into you there in Vegas. I was in and out of there. I even cut my trip a day short. I was supposed to leave Monday night, and then it was Sunday night, and I was like, nope, I can't do another day here. My body will not hold up. So unfortunately, I'm bummed that I didn't run into you there, but congratulations on all the success. Anything that you want to plug before we get you out of here?
No, just head over to the Hoops Tonight channel and subscribe. Yeah, Vegas, I think I've been there 6 times in the last 36 months, and I hope I could use a break. Because I went a couple extra times for the Dead and Company shows at the Sphere.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say one thing I really appreciate about Vegas is really good food there. And I always eat really well when I'm there, but it's just it's tough. And then the constant in and out from blazing heat to crazy air conditioner with oxygen being pumped into the room to going back out into the heat, and now you're getting in an Uber and it's blasting AC on you, and it's just the wild oscillations in temperature, and the Uber process itself is stressful. I do enjoy Summer League, but to me it's 2 days tops, and then I'm I gotta get out of there. But it was good to be on, man. It was good to see you. I'm very, very excited about this Lakers team this year. It's going to be a fun one. I was literally just looking at the calendar. We're less than 3 months away from the season opener. So, we're going to get to see these guys play. I especially can't wait to watch Ayton with Luka. I think I think those two are going to cut the league up in a lot of ways. So it's going to be fun, man. And it was good to be on, and I'm looking forward to next time.
Yeah, I'm probably about as high. I'm at dangerous levels of high on DeAndre Ayton, which is how he wound up with his contract in the first place, because somebody else was dangerously high on DeAndre Ayton, but he didn't have Luka back then. So I think it'll be pretty good. But
after the extension, I don't want anything to do with it. But for this year,
yeah,
let's go, DeAndre. We got this, buddy.
Just find a way to keep DeAndre Ayton at contract year DeAndre Ayton. If you could always have him in contract years, that'd be great in any way, shape, or form. But I don't know if they'll be able to do that. But yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that share button as well. Until the next time you guys hear from us, I'm Anthony Irwin. That was Jason Timpf. This has been the Lakers Lounge. Have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you when I talk to you.